Hey, everybody, welcome back to this episode. I'm changing my microphone. Sorry about that.
Looks like we're having technical. I can't hear. Can you guys hear me?
I can hear you, Jamie.
Okay, but we can't hear John. So while John fixes his mic, I'm going to kind of take. Oh, now I can hear you. Great.
All right.
Wow, technical difficulties.
Rule number one of doing a podcast: make sure you're not on mute. There we go. Yeah. All right. I'm like checking my microphone. I don't know what's going on. Right. All right. Anyway, Jamie and I are looking forward to talking to JJ Kramer, who is the Vice President and Associate General Counsel and Globe Head of Intellectual Property at Abercrombie Fitch. But we're really here kind of to talk about how he's the Chairman and CEO of CREEM Magazine, which when I saw, I don't know how we're connected, JJ, on Facebook, but I saw that you kind of took over this dream job of this classic magazine that happened to be your father's. And I just was inspired, and I just happened to email you. I friended you and emailed you from Facebook, and then I didn't even realize that you knew Jamie. You went to school with Jamie, and you went to camp with Jamie. And now I'm just finding out that she was your first. You were her first boyfriend 35 years ago.
It was 9 years old, love at first sight, right?
Yeah, there we go.
It lasted probably all of 4 days.
Right.
That's right. But it was a really special 4 days. And I'll never forget it.
From June 1st to June 5th, 1985. Those were the glory days.
Yes. Then Jamie went on to better prospects. I understood.
Right.
Not even. But it's so, I love the introduction. And yes, JJ and I have known each other forever. I love seeing his face on here. And it's just so funny that we skim over the fact that you have a pretty major job at Abercrombie & Fitch. And I'm sure you have so much to tell our audience about just your learnings and what you do and how you conduct business for an enormous brand. But it's true, we're kind of going to skip over that or maybe weave it in a little bit and talk about CREEM. And John, I don't want to take over for you, but I have like kind of
I think you already did.
Sorry.
No, listen, you're seeing your 9-year-old boyfriend. That's the moment.
So, JJ, I feel like I've known the history of CREEM because I've known you so long, but and I wanted to get into it, but for me, you were trying to resurrect a magazine, well, really a brand, CREEM, the brand, and it started with the documentary, and now you've launched the magazine again. But all the while, as having a very probably demanding job, being a father, everything that comes with life. And I know that a lot of our listeners are just starting their dreams, and maybe it's on the side with everything else going on. And so I guess my question to you is, how did you kind of come through that timing issue, the challenges that came up with really spending time on something when you don't have a lot of it, and how that affected you over the past few years?
Yeah, thanks for that question. It was not an easy challenge, and it took some experimentation with allocating time, different ways. My starting point was Abercrombie always has to be the priority. And although I'm super passionate about my side hustle for obvious reasons, which we'll get into, that has to be my priority. So if I lay out my schedule for, what my job requires of me, and then try to find time around that, that was sort of my starting point. So if that means waking up 2 hours earlier every morning to bang out some emails, or after the kids go down, putting in a couple hours every night and carving out time on the weekends, and taking strategic PTO. So if I'm working, if I was doing a series of interviews, for the documentary that I needed to be at, I would have open and transparent communications with A&F saying, hey, this is something that I've been working on. you've known about this, for quite some time. I'm going to need to stack some PTO here. It's a little unusual how I'm scheduling it, but I want to give you a heads up. And, through those communications and strategic allocation of time, I was able to do it. And none of it would have happened had I not had an incredibly supportive team at A&F, that really kind of supported what I was trying to do. And I think, the second thing is I needed to learn how to let go of certain things and delegate them to a team. That's much easier said than done when you're, for me, when it comes to CREEM, I hold it so close to the chest for obvious reasons that it was almost suffocating it at the beginning. And I needed to learn how to delegate, how to find people that I trust to run the day-to-day, because no matter how I shuffle my time, I can't be there for every single decision. I can't, nor do I want to be at this point. So I needed to find people that I could trust to kind of pass the baton. And that's something that's evolved over the past, couple years, where I've started to put a team together of, whether they're employees or contractors or advisors to help me, execute CREEM's long-term plan.
And I did see that you just appointed a CEO who we both know. Is it CEO? Is that his title?
COO, yeah, operations.
COO, okay.
Who's the COO?
And Matt Usher.
Oh,
Yeah.
I saw that Usher COO. Yeah.
Great choice. Great choice.
So as long as Jamie and I have known each other, that's how long Usher and I have known each other as well. And so he's always
Usher go to Chattanooga.
Oh yeah,
that's what I thought. So you have to work at Chattanooga to be on this. I've been to family camp at Chattanooga, so you have to have gone to Chattanooga to be on this podcast today.
That's right. It is the tie that binds, but right. Usher has always been a huge supporter, a champion of the brand. And now that we're starting to scale things a little bit, it made a lot of sense for him to come in and, him offering to, come in and help me start running this like a real proper business with all of his expertise running Usher Oil. It just made a lot of sense. Plus, it's, fun to work with someone that you've been best friends with, your entire life. I mean, we still fight like brothers, but it works.
That's great. So let's talk about growing a company. There's so many layers here that I want to talk about. So I have an extensive question, right? So you're this brand that you have, that your father started, that, there's so much, I could just tell from your post, there's so much deep emotional connection to not only the brand, but the brand that your father built, the energy that your father put into it, and just the soul of who he is. And so now you kind of bring this back. You're bringing in, childhood friendships to run it, kind of keeping that same energy with it. And yet you're growing a business in a pandemic where people are working remotely and you need to really work virtually, right? And so how are you doing that in today's world?
Great question. So, our you hit the nail right on the head. Our team is entirely virtual. I have a team out in LA that runs a lot of the day-to-day. Usher's in Michigan. I have a couple advisors that are out in New York. And, really for us, it's just finding that rhythm, finding that cadence. It's not always easy. Sometimes you have to shuffle things around. But if everybody on the team is committing to, this is our biweekly sales touch base, and we're going to revise our quarterly strategy for e-com sales or for magazine project. And then I'm able to pass the baton to our brand president who's out in LA and say, okay, here's the plan that we've aligned on. We've done a lot of front loading and a lot of work on it. Now you go execute it. And I'm going to step away from this as much as I can. Then, because of the network that we've spent a long time, or I shouldn't say network, the infrastructure, the virtual infrastructure that we've worked to establish, it starts to work. I'm not going to say that it's perfect. It's never perfect. There's tons of hiccups all the time, and we work with it. That's the whole, startup mentality, and something that I've needed to really embraces the whole idea of not letting the perfect get in the way of the good when it comes to what we're doing with CREEM. And we're a different hat at A&F, but when it comes to CREEM, we're going to mess things up. It's okay. And it's, it's therapeutic for me to say that. It's, it's good because every time I see like a typo in an email or something, I'm like, oh man, but it's okay. Like I'm the only one who's noticing these things.
For sure. So can we rewind a little bit for those that don't know what the history of CREEM and kind of what sparked you to resurrect it, to get it back going? I think that we like started in the middle and now I want to push back to the beginning. Yeah,
I'll try and do the 60-second history here. So CREEM is an iconic rock and roll magazine that was founded by my father, Barry Kramer, in Detroit in 1969. It published for about 20 years until 1989. In 1981, my father passed away of an accidental drug overdose. I was 4 years old at the time, and he left the magazine to me. So at 4 years old, I was chairman of the board of my own rock and roll magazine, which was really fun to talk about at Show and Tell. At school. My mom stepped in and essentially became the publisher of the magazine, and the plan was she would keep it afloat until such time as I could take over. Unfortunately, a lot changed in the late 80s in terms of like the media landscape, and MTV was blossoming and people were spending their ad dollars much differently. And unfortunately, the magazine was unable to sort of be sustained, and it ended up being sold off to a third party that moved it to LA. So fast forward, a few decades, and I've essentially spent the better part of my adult life piecing the rights to CREEM back together. So after CREEM was sold to this third party, the rights were kind of fragmented and sold off to various parties. And I've spent probably the past 15, maybe even 20 years putting those rights back together. Fortunately, I'm a practicing intellectual property attorney, and my skill set, whether it's fate or coincidence or whatever you want to call it, really came in handy because that's exactly what I was doing, was piecing together the intellectual property, the copyright in the print archive, the trademark rights. And I was finally able to accomplish that entire exercise in early 2016. It took that long. And then that's when we started working on the documentary. And my whole motivation for doing it is, just a connection to my father. I didn't really know him, and I've, for better, for worse, CREEM and my father are like inextricably intertwined. I can't separate the two. And so for me, getting CREEM back and getting closer to what that was all about, helped me get to know him, in a different way. So that's always been my fuel. And it has not been an easy road to put this puzzle back together. There's been, really low points and litigation and like times where I thought about hanging up the cleats, where I was encouraged to hang up the cleats. But I couldn't do it. I'm just hardwired, to really just lean into it and to grind, and finally got it to where we are now. So it's been an incredible journey.
It is such an accomplishment, and really, it's really a beautiful story. I mean, it is, and I obviously wish you all the success in it. So, and John, I know we usually toggle back and forth, but talk to me about like running a magazine and producing a documentary are very different things. Both of which you really didn't have much experience in. So I guess talk about kind of like, I don't know if bootstrapping is the right word, but like just like learning everything that you needed to know about both of those things in the span of a few years, really. Yeah. And what that process was for you.
It's drinking from the fire hose is what it really is. I was fortunate in both cases, like to work with a team of people who had been there and done that. So, on the documentary side, the director I was working with had bootstrapped his previous documentary. And so we kind of had a blueprint that we could follow. We had a great, team of producers and executive producers that were all believers in this thing, and we supported each other. But in many ways, it was like a lot of it was learning on the fly. Like when I first started working on the documentary, I thought my producer title would almost be like a ceremonial thing. No, like I learned how to produce a movie. I can't say I was necessarily going into it thinking it was going to be that way, but that's absolutely the way it ended up. And it was really, some of it was try, fail quickly, and then go back and, try something else. And then we started to get, the hang of it. And we started to, figure out how we were going to delegate certain responsibilities. We had a very, very lean team because we had a very lean budget. We just, made it work. And then what we did with the magazine was we essentially took that a similar blueprint. It's, I found an editor and publisher that this is their bread and butter. This is what they do. Mapped out what we wanted this magazine to look like. I got out of the way a lot and said, you do what you do. Here's what I would like this to be. Here's my vision. I'm going to get out of the way and let the experts do what the experts do. And then, we'll find times for me to provide feedback and get a bow tied around this thing. And that, again, looping back to like being able to let go of things, that was tough for me because when it comes to this, I'm very like micro. Like I want everything that has to do with CREEM has to be perfect. But I had to take a more macro view, A, because I simply don't have the time or the bandwidth, and B, I didn't have the expertise. So I didn't want it to result in a poor product for the audience.
Right.
It's a beautiful story. Why do you think? Why do you think this was kind of on your path? I mean, what's the kind of the spiritual foundation of this? Because as I hear your story, and I'm so sorry to hear about your dad, and that journey must not have been an easy journey. But you inherit this like piece of his soul that's like kind of always kind of there. And many people could have chosen not to bring that up, the emotions, the feelings, everything that goes attached to it. So why do you think this is on your path?
I think there's a couple reasons. One, it's been incredibly therapeutic for me. I always joke, with my wife and my family that I probably should have been in therapy for my father's passing and all of like the trauma my entire life. I wasn't. This has been my therapy, going through the documentary and talking to people who knew him and piecing things together about his personality. The good, the bad, the ugly, the crazy. It's all like helped me have a different vision of him, and that's been and release some of like the anger and the emotions I've had about like not having him in my life. So that was a lot of fuel. Was that, and the second thing is legacy. I want this to be around for my kids. I view it as the family business, right? So different folks have different family businesses, and I would love nothing more than to have this to pass along to Jackson and Sylvie, my kids, at some point down the road. So like, I think that's why it's on my path, both for, a connection to my father, and it'll give my kids a connection to their grandfather as well.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, me too. It's really touching. So, I don't know if now's the time. I know that we only have a few minutes left to do kind of a lightning round, but I do want to make sure that everybody knows, and I know that we do this at the end, but really want to spell it out here. Where can people find the documentary right now that will ultimately lead them to the magazine? But where can people find it if they want to learn about the history and learn about your father and the legacy that he has built?
Yeah, so it's on iTunes, it's on Amazon, Google Play, basically all your TVOD platforms. It's available right now. We're going to be announcing a streaming deal soon, so you'll be able to find it elsewhere. I'm bound by confidentiality, so I can't share it just yet. But that'll be coming soon. And then on our website, creammag.com, we've got links out to the documentary as well, and copies of the magazine, and boy howdy swag and all that good stuff as well.
I love it.
And what's the cadence right now for putting out magazines at this point?
So this 50th anniversary issue was like proof of concept for us. We wanted to see if the demand was there. We did an alternate distribution model. We did it pre-sale, and we printed limited copies, and we sold it all through our website, and it blew off the proverbial shelves. So for us, that was the proof of concept we needed, and now we're going to go look at the rest of the calendar for 21. Talk about whether we want to do one or two more issues, maybe on a quarterly cadence. But we're still working with that strategy as we kind of sell through the remaining few copies we have. But we're super excited about the magazine, the documentary. We're also working on a few other projects. We're working into a scripted television show based on the documentary. We're working on.
Will Jamie be in that?
Obviously, that's part of the story.
That's funny.
That's great.
Yeah.
We'll have to have you on again, JJ, and talk the intellectual property. I mean, because I love talking about intellectual property and things of that nature. I think it's a fascinating topic, and we'll definitely have you on again to talk about it. But we really wanted to focus on CREEM because of just the backstory and pay tribute not only to the magazine but your dad, and just the resilience behind it, and the idea of jumping into things that you may not have experienced, but the only way to learn is to just do and just jump in. And I think with COVID, there's so many people who have circumstances that are out of their control, but what they can take control of is figuring things out and finding their own passion, their own dream, and building that from scratch. Jamie's a great example of doing that, starting her virtual business and helping companies create systems and processes and doing great things because of the circumstance that happened through COVID with her. So I can't thank you enough for being on the show. We do have a quick speed round. You ready, JJ?
Let's do it.
All right. Finish this sentence. One thing you learned about your dad that you didn't know through this journey is?
That he was unbelievably kind and acted as a fatherly figure to many people within his circle of friends and coworkers.
I love that. If you could have dinner with three people, either living or dead, who would they be?
Barry Kramer, Steve Jobs, and I'm going to go with a sports icon, Isaiah Thomas, Detroit Pistons.
All right, I like it. All right, Jamie always has some good questions. If you could talk to 20 people, no, I'm just kidding. Define yourself in one word.
Resilient.
Mm.
All right.
For sure. It was great talking to you, JJ. It was good seeing your face again after a few years, and we'll definitely have you on, because I do think, like John said, the intellectual property piece, and then also kind of I would think, and I'm just guessing, but there might be a little bit of an imposter syndrome that went into the making of a documentary and the making of a magazine, and how you get over that, because a lot of people have that when they're starting a business. And I think that's a whole nother show. So
there you go.
Awesome.
Yeah, right. We'd love to get into that with you guys. That's a thing, for real.
Yeah. Tell everybody again where they can, get in touch with you, buy the magazine, the apparel, the documentary, all that stuff, and who your ideal audience is.
Well, I'll start with the last one. Our ideal audience is anybody who has a love and appreciation for the spirit and energy of rock and roll. That's cross-generational, cross-genre. It's an energy, and it's a vibe. So that's who we're for. And then if you want to check out the website, creammag.com. And I can always be reached at jj@creammag.com with anyone who wants to learn a little bit more.
All right. JJ, thanks a ton. Appreciate you being on the show. Jamie, always fun co-hosting with you. Think community, if you want to get a hold of JJ, please do. Go to CREEM Mag if it makes, I don't know what I was going to say, but go to CREEM Mag if you want to buy the magazine. All right. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Bye. Bye, Jay.